All right, good morning. So for this session, what we're going to do is we have three different learning targets. Number one, I can guide my students through phase 3, connecting thinking of focused note taking. Number two, that you can teach your students about Costa's 3 levels of questioning. And then finally, that you can use Costa's levels of thinking to create more rigor in the classroom. So a quick rewind. The first time we got together, we talked about just taking notes. And we did an example with the magic square. And ultimately, when we got done with that whole experience, we said, hey, let's just try taking some notes. Use a bunch of different formats, but the key things we want out of you is this. One, always start with a learning target. Two, choose a format, but then tell the kids why you chose it. For example, I chose 3-column notes today because we're going to divide our information into 3 parts. And then finally, the last step is tell the students why you're taking the notes. How are they going to use them? What's the purpose of them? All right, so one of the big takeaways I think we took from that was that we want our kids to be going back over our notes or their notes multiple times because it will help them not forget the information and retain it. I don't know if we talked about this the first time we met, but one rule of thumb they always talk about is 10, 24, 7. Review the notes or have the kids work with them within 10 minutes of getting done with them, after 24 hours the next day, and then 7 days later. If you do that, that will help the kids keep the information in their head and retain it longer. The second stage of focused note taking is processing notes. And Stacy did a good job of talking about that. What it really involves is going back through your notes and reviewing them, for sure within 24 hours. The cool part about processing notes and that we got to do when we did our activity is you can collaborate. That's where you can talk to each other and compare your notes and add and so forth. On the next page, I'll show you some ways that we talked about doing that. And then what I want you to do is actually stop on that page and talk about how you've been doing that with your kids. All right, so here are some of the ways that Stacy talked about processing our notes. One, we can underline key terms. We can highlight important things. We can circle dates. We can, when we're talking with Bart, we can actually add to our notes. But it also is organizing our notes, maybe chunking them or putting them in places or putting different levels. Right now, what I want you to do is I want you to stop the video and I want you to talk with your PLC about what does that look like during this last month. You've been taking notes, but have you started to work on that processing piece and what's working well for you? What have you tried with your students? Share ideas because ultimately we'll be better off with it. And then press play again. Which leads us to the third one, to today's topic, connecting thinking. This is when all your notes are basically done, but now we're going to go back and start to add layers. We're going to think beyond the notes. And so when we start to think beyond the notes, there's 2 key ways that we can do it. We can ask questions about the notes, and then we can start to add some original thinking where we can start to connect what's on the page to maybe outside experiences. When it comes to asking questions, we're going to focus today on Costa's levels, a great way to start adding rigor to our questions and also having kids write good questions. And then when it comes to adding original thinking during this connecting stage, this is where many times you're going to have kids that go back to notes and you're going to say, hey, tell me what you already know about this topic. So for example, I was teaching Black Beauty in Miss Hamlin's class one day, and the kids are talking about breaking a horse. So maybe at this point, I stop the kids and say, hey, have you guys ever had to train an animal? I want you to write down anything you know about training an animal. Now you're connecting their notes to an experience that they've had. Other things that you could have to do with the kids is, hey guys, I want you to give me examples of different things that are put on a horse, if you know what they are. They can add those to their notes. Or many times you can take what they're reading or what their notes are about and connect it to prior learning. So maybe we were talking about, hey, what person is this story being told in, first or third? The kids have to go back to prior learning and connect it to this set of notes. So let's go into the Costa's levels of thinking. All right, so let's dive deeper into that question piece so that we can do phase 3 of focused note taking. In AVID, they highly recommend that we use Costa's levels of thinking. And when I learned about this 15 years ago, it changed the way I taught. Honestly, I loved it. Here's why. Costa took Bloom's taxonomy and he broke it down into 3 levels, and level 1 being the most basic to level 3 being some really rigorous questions. And what I liked about that is I could tell kids, hey, we're going to ask different levels of questions in here, and eventually I want you to be able to ask those questions. The best part though about it was it changed the way I ran discussions and I asked questions in my classroom. Just like most teachers, I asked a lot of low-level questions. What they were right or wrong questions, did you know the fact, and so forth. And so I started to actually go into Costa's little chart here, and I'd pick a level 2 question and a level 3 question for my particular lesson. I taught science. What it forced me to do was this. I was always worried about kids might not know the answers. They're kind of tough. Well, what it forced me to do was to start using more groups for answering questions, partners, and then having them bring it back to me. And for me, that's when I started to not be in charge of the learning and the kids took over. So let's talk about these different levels. Level 1 is your most basic question. They call it the gathering stage. And what it really is, it's looking for the answers inside your notes, if you're doing notes, or inside your text. It's right there. It's a right or wrong answer. So, circle the question, or circle the numbers, the odd numbers on your page. Or who are the 3 characters in this poem? They're right in the page, they're right or wrong. It's pretty easy to point to. The next one, level 2, is processing. So you have the notes there, but for them to answer one of these questions, they might have to look inside their text in a couple different places. So it might be a compare and contrast 2 characters that are inside the story. Or maybe it's you have all these different types of rocks and you want them to sort them using your notes. And then the final phase is level 3, and that's the ones that my kids actually like the most. Those are the ones where they have to start to apply the information to a situation that's not even here. And today, actually, in kindergarten class, good job, kindergarten, I saw a teacher ask a level 3 question. Now, I think it was in the benchmark book, but she had the kids say, or ask the kids, hey, what would your car look like in the future? What could your car do? Well, they had just learned about cars and the different changes in cars, but now she was having them actually think about and write a sentence about what would their car look like in the future. That's a high level 3 question. So let's take a look at how you can incorporate those into your classroom. Here's an example of a level 1, level 2, level 3 question. So just to get a feel for it. A level 1 question says, give me an example of a non-metal on a periodic table. Remember, information can be on charts, it can be on maps, it can be in your notes, but with level 1 questions, you can simply find it, point to it, and give the answer. Level 2 question, same topic, compare and contrast the properties of a metal and a non-metal. We're taking it up another level where they have to take the information they already know and then do something with it. And then finally, the last one is where they're applying it. In this particular situation, hey, create an experiment where you can determine whether an element is a metal or a non-metal. So those are the 3 different levels, an example. Now let's talk about how you could actually do this in the classroom when you start to teach it with kids. So as we start to teach this with our kids, we try to incorporate into our notes. I am not like the master of this. We have a lot of people who have been doing this for many years. But here's one idea of how you could start to introduce the different levels of questions into your notes or into your reading, and so the kids can learn about them. What I would recommend maybe is writing a level 1, a level 2, and a level 3 question together as a class after you've read a book, or after you've done an assignment, or after you've taken some notes. And have the kids go over and grab the different verbs with you and put them in so that you can write the questions together. Then eventually you can hopefully have the kids gradually release and start to do it themselves, but you're always going to have to assist them. The nice part is that you can have kids work together many times as partners to write these questions, and then they can even ask each other the questions. All right, so now you know the different levels, level 1, level 2, level 3. Now I want to show you some of the different resources that are out there that Stacy's actually grabbed for you. There's a whole bunch of different charts that look like this, and you've got to find the one that works best for you and your kids. But this is kind of a good example where, hey, they don't even have the levels 1, 2, and 3 there. I might add that, but if you look down below, they talk about it. And there they talk about a level 1 question is a Google question because you can just search it, you can find it. And then a level 2 question is a noodle question because you got to think about it, you got to use your brain. And then a level 3 question is a doodle question because you have to create something. The rest of these things, I just want to check out these different handouts and ideas because I think they'll be useful for you. The resources there, and then at the very end, we'll talk about where do we go from here. The next one talks about it as if it's a menu. So level 1 would be, hey, what's up on the menu? The items. Hey, level 2 is like comparing the different menu items. Which one do I want? Oh, this one has 2 hamburger patties. This one has only 1. And then level 3 would be like, I'm going to design my own menu. I'm going to make my own recipe. So another way to think about, another way to teach your kids about it. This was a stoplight. Red, or green, yellow, red. I actually used these colors when I taught Avid. We underlined every question that was a level 1 question with green. A level 2 was yellow, and a level 3 was red. Green, pretty straightforward. Hey, just go find the answer. It's on your page. Yellow one, oh, slow down. You're probably going to have to look at your information a couple different ways because you're going to have to do something with it. And then finally, level 3, that stop. You're going to have to think because we're going to have you think outside these notes and apply it. Other things that are out there, there's a house for just math. There's some that have questions already put together for you. So like for English, there's a bunch of level 1, 2, 3 questions for, same thing for math, social studies, science. Avid has put together some things for just when you're doing readings with those Avid weeklies. And then they have a whole bunch of other resources in that folder that all have to do with that level 1, 2, 3 questions. All right, so we're going to do a little check for understanding. We're going to actually use Costa's levels to check your understanding. So a level 1 question would be, how many levels are there in Costa's levels of thinking? Pretty basic, right? All right, so here's a level 2 question, and I actually want you to do this with your group. This is a fun one to do with kids too, where basically what you do is you put a whole bunch of different questions out there, and then you have the kids determine, is this a level 1 question, a level 2 question, level 3 question? So I've got 3 questions coming up on the next slides. I want you to pause it, take a look at it together, and then I'll give you the answer. So you're going to try to determine what level question these are. All right, so here's your first question. I want you to pause it. I want you to discuss as a group which level do you think it is, and then push play. Were you right? Here comes the next question. All right, pause it, take a look at it, discuss it, then push play. Were you right? All right, the last one. Pause it, discuss it, and then push play. Did you get it right? That's a tougher one, but think about it. The answer wasn't right on the page. They had to use information that they already knew in their notes, and then they had to process it to kind of figure out, okay, how would the amount of code change if we burned less energy or we used less energy? All right, finally, a level 3 question. How could I start to teach and use these in my classroom? How could you start to use the Costas levels of questions for that connecting phase of focused note-taking? And then secondly, how could I use them to enrich my conversations in class, my discussion? Could I incorporate some level 2 and 3 questions intentionally into my classroom? On the next page, there's about 3 or 4 or 5 things to think about and discuss with your group, and that's it. We'd really like you to use some brainstorming time on how you could incorporate this stuff into your practice in the next couple months. So here's that level 3 question I left you with on the other page. How can I teach Costas levels and use these in the classroom? Down below, there's some other subcategories that you maybe want to discuss, but ultimately what I want you to do is just pause this, or you can go on to the Schoology page, and I have these questions there also. But pause, talk with your PLC, try to figure out how can we as a team start to incorporate this into our classroom, teach it to our kids, and start using it with the focused note-taking process. Thanks a lot.